Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 based on novel. So let's start. The cold spring was icy cold. Its temperature was at least in the negatives. However, the strange thing was that it didn't freeze up. After entering the spring, Hu Yuhao could clearly sense chilly origin energy rippling through the water. Although such ice-type origin energy didn't affect him, the chilly aura that it possessed was very pure. No wonder Nan Shueishui claimed that this spring could nourish a human's body. The spring was very deep. Hu Yuhao circulated his soul power and sank down. The deeper he went, the lower the temperature became. If it were any other ordinary soul master here, his soul power would be drained very quickly. However, Hu Yuhao wasn't affected at all. His martial soul was even being nourished. The lights around also started to dim. However, this didn't affect Hu Yuhao at all, even though the darkness and cold would have greatly affected a soul master of the same rank as him. Although his spiritual power couldn't reach as far in the water, it was already very strong. Apart from the fact that it extended at a slower speed, Hu Yuhao wasn't drained much in this aspect either. The deeper he went, the faster his spiritual power extended downward. Even the Earth Dragon sect wasn't clear on what was going on down below. Of course, Hu Yuhao had to be cautious to keep himself from getting into any trouble. Nan Shueishui had told Hu Yuhao that this spring was around 30 meters deep. At the very bottom, even a soul dolor like her wouldn't be able to resist it. The cave was located at around a depth of between 30 to 35 meters. However, Hu Yuhao sensed that the depth of this spring didn't seem to be only 30 meters. When he was 30 meters down, he felt a very strong surge of cold. It felt as if it were coming the bottom, just below where the strong surge of cold originated from. However, he discovered that the mouth of the spring seemed to be down there at the bottom. The mouth was very large, a person could get through it. Hu Yuhao could sense a strong, deep blue color using his spiritual detection. This showed how cold it was down there. He was very curious about this spring mouth. The colder a place was, the better it was for him to cultivate his ultimate ice soul power. To him, it felt very similar to the ice-fire yin-yang well. This was something that he hadn't expected at all. However, Hu Yuhao needed to breathe even though he wasn't affected by the cold and darkness. Even though he could hold his breath for a long time, he couldn't do it forever. Let me find the cave opening first. As he thought, Hu Yuhao continued to use his soul power to control his body as he dived down. Very soon, he was at a depth of 25 meters. His diving speed was much quicker than the ancestors of the Earth Dragon sect. After all, he didn't have to protect himself from the cold. The walls around the spring were cold and slippery. Touching them was like touching manifold mysterious ice. As Hu Yuhao dived down, he kept on searching for the cave opening. This cave was rumored to exist naturally. It was originally not a well, but the natural mouth of a spring. After the Earth Dragon sect gained control of this place, they built a well specifically for it. This was why they designed mechanisms when they first constructed the well. If one wasn't the leader of the Earth Dragon sect, it was very difficult to find these mechanisms. Hu Yuhao followed the walls and felt his way to the cave opening. With the help of his spiritual power, he quickly located a bulge. Normally, one would press down on such a bulge when they felt it. However, the Earth Dragon sect designed it in the reverse. Hu Yuhao grabbed hold of that bulge and pulled it up. He used more than 40% of his soul power before the bulge moved up slightly. After this, he turned around and swam to the wall on the other side. He felt an ordinary dent on it. This dent didn't exist previously. It only appeared after he meddled with the bulge earlier. He pressed hard on the dent and a soft zia sound was heard. Hu Yuhao returned to the bulge and pressed it down this time. He pressed it all the way down until it disappeared. The entire wall started to shake slightly. Hu Yuhao turned around and saw a door that could only fit a single person slowly opening. The weird thing was that there was a strong surge of cold as the door slowly opened. Even Hu Yuhao could sense a tinge of chill, though he possessed an ultimate ice martial soul. What a low temperature! Hu Yuhao was in great awe and focused his attention on it. The door slowly opened and Hu Yuhao rushed forward. It was clearly a cold spring outside. However, this door seemed to possess some magical force. Not a drop of the cold spring water seeped past it. Even as Hu Yuhao entered, the cold spring water was filtered from his body. He instantly became very dry. As he was dried, he felt an extreme sense of chill sweep over him. Gusts of chilly air carried visible icy elements that surged towards Hu Yuhao's body. However, it was a pity that they were stopped by Hu Yuhao's Ice Empress armor. Not only did they not cause him any harm, but they even stimulated Hu Yuhao's ultimate ice soul power. Even though Hu Yuhao was using his Ice Empress right now, he could still sense the situation in the cavern using his spiritual power. This cavern couldn't be considered very large. It was filled with unknown mineral stones, and the temperature was very low. It was similar to the extreme chill ice spring. Its temperature was comparable. If Hu Yuhao's abilities were still at the level they were when he had first encountered the extreme chill ice spring, he wouldn't be able to bear such a low temperature. He didn't rush to venture in. He only carefully observed his surroundings at the cave opening. At the same time, the Ice Empress started calling out in his spiritual sea. Although it was unknown what kind of ice-type treasure belonged here, it was clear that such an extreme level of cold wouldn't exist for no reason. Even at the core of the extreme north, the temperature wasn't so low. Jade-green lights flashed, brightening their surroundings. The Ice Empress silently appeared beside Hu Yuhao. The light from her body lit up everything around them. Hu Yuhao was immediately stunned. Hu Yuhao wasn't the only one who was stunned. The Ice Empress was also stunned. The cavern looked extremely beautiful as it was lit up by the Ice Empress' jade-green light. It almost seemed surreal. The entire cavern was formed using all types of crystals. These crystals were jade blue, but it was likely that the Ice Empress' jade-green light had affected their color a little. They should, in fact, be deep blue in color. These crystals were smooth and transparent. They looked ethereally beautiful under the jade-green light. Their beauty was almost indescribable. It was as if Hu Yuhao and the Ice Empress had entered an immortal realm. The ground, walls, and ceiling were filled with such crystals. They varied greatly, and were all glowing brightly. The different intensities of the jade blue crystals brightened the cavern such that every minor detail could be clearly observed. Hu Yuhao was in awe as he asked, "Ice Empress, what is this?" The Ice Empress was a little stunned as she looked at everything around her. After this, her figure flashed before she drifted away. Although she existed as a spirit and a spiritual entity, her affinity with the ice element was still very strong. She could sense that the chill in the cavern was surging towards her as she flew out. After this, the chill started to revolve around her. This seems like the legendary manifold mysterious ice cavern. How is this possible? Why is there such a place here? God! This is unbelievable. The Ice Empress' voice seemed to have turned hysterical. It was Hu Yuhao's first time seeing her so shocked. No, this isn't the manifold mysterious ice cavern yet. This is the divine ice crystal that accompanies the manifold mysterious ice cavern. There are so many divine ice crystals here. I'm sure the manifold mysterious ice cavern exists here. This is too unbelievable. How is it possible that such a place exists in the human world? The Ice Empress appeared to have gone a little crazy as she kept on dancing in the cavern. The light from her body lit up the entire cavern. The cavern couldn't be considered very large. It was only 30 meters in length, but Hu Yuhao could sense that there were streaks of light blue mist revolving around the Ice Empress as she flew within the cavern. Even he was in awe of the extremely low temperature of these streaks of mist. Such a low temperature was completely unimaginable. The Ice Empress flew for a good 15 minutes before she stopped. Hu Yuhao breathed in the cold air and felt as if he had to circulate his ultimate ice soul power to dispel the chill. This meant that the cold here even surpassed his ultimate ice. It was close to absolute zero. Yuhao, how did you find this place? How did you find it? The Ice Empress quickly regained her awareness and returned to Hu Yuhao. She grabbed his shoulders. Apart from the look of excitement on her face, she was also greatly sentimental. An elder brought me here. It's the location of their sect. What's wrong, Ice Empress? What's the manifold mysterious ice cavern? And the divine ice crystal? The Ice Empress took in a deep breath and tried to calm her emotions. She said, the manifold mysterious ice cavern is an ice-type ultimate place. Let me give you an example. If the Snow Empress and I could have found the manifold mysterious ice cavern before we become your spirits, we wouldn't have needed to find any way to achieve a breakthrough. Our abilities would have been able to overcome any bottleneck we faced. In the near future, we would have definitely been able to challenge Di Tian. To be more direct, the manifold mysterious ice cavern is a treasure ground for ice-type cultivators like us. Why was Di Tian able to overcome 8 consecutive bottlenecks and become the god of all beasts, and even invincible? This is because he managed to gain control of a treasure ground, the Lake of Life in the core region of the Great Star Doe Forest. He used the immense life energy there to nourish himself, allowing him to achieve what he has today. However, the truth is that the Lake of Life can nourish any soul beast. He's not the only one who can benefit from it. This is because the Lake of Life is life type. In fact, it isn't completely compatible with his darkness type. Even so, he is still able to cultivate to such a level. But the manifold mysterious ice cavern is completely compatible with us. It is as valuable as the Lake of Life to us. After hearing her words, Wu Yuhao was instantly astonished. He had personally seen the Lake of Life before. At the core of the Lake of Life was life gold. In addition, it wasn't even lacking in amount. It was the place that held the lifeline of the entire Great Star Doe Forest. If the manifold mysterious ice cavern could compare to the Lake of Life like what the Ice Empress had said, it would be completely unbelievable. Ice Empress, is there no manifold mysterious ice cavern at the core of the extreme north? Wu Yuhao asked. The Ice Empress was in a bit of daze. She seemed to still be struck with disbelief. Another voice sounded at this moment. Yes, there's at least another one. As a light projection flashed, the Skydream Ice Worm appeared beside the Ice Empress. He was also as emotional. Wu Yuhao was puzzled as he looked at the Skydream Ice Worm. The Ice Empress also glanced at him in the same way, but there was an extra weird look in her eyes. The Skydream Ice Worm asked, Yuhao, did you forget how I managed to survive for so long? Wu Yuhao's body shook. You mentioned that you spent most of your time sleeping, and 1,000,000 years passed just like that. I remember that you consumed some kind of ice essence and fell into a deep sleep. Don't tell me. Skydream nodded. That's right. The manifold mysterious ice essence that I consumed came from the manifold mysterious ice cavern. I discovered that place unintentionally. The essence of an ice cavern lies in the ice essence. I was just an ice worm, but I relied on the benefits of the ice essence to cultivate into a 1,000,000-year soul beast. Ice also wanted to kill me because of this. HMPH, the Ice Empress snorted, if you had let me have the ice essence then, the beast god might not be Di-Chien. The Snow Empress would also. The Skydream Ice Worm leisurely replied, Ice, stop whining. This is called fate and destiny. Are you looking for a beating? The Ice Empress snorted furiously, and the Skydream Ice Worm immediately stopped making any sound. The Ice Empress turned to Wu Yuhao and said, I didn't expect there to be a second manifold mysterious ice cavern in this world. Your luck is simply too good. Furthermore, this ice cavern is different from the one that Skydream encountered the other time. Wu Yuhao was delighted. From the Ice Empress' agitated look, and how the Skydream Ice Worm described the situation, he must have had gotten extremely lucky. No matter what the difference was, it should be extremely beneficial to him. The Ice Empress said, the ice cavern that Skydream was in had a huge amount of manifold mysterious ice essence. That thing is very nourishing for ice-type soul beasts like us. It's a real treasure. It's of the same tier as your life gold. However, we didn't see any divine ice crystals. A manifold mysterious ice cavern is in fact formed when mysterious ice is converted into it under huge pressure after being hidden for more than 10,000 years. Hundreds of thousands of years, and even upwards of 1,000,000 years might be needed for it to be formed. The right opportunities are also required. This ice cavern is filled with so many divine ice crystals. As for how much manifold mysterious ice essence can be produced, it's difficult to tell. However, there's bound to be some. I had a look over there earlier, there isn't any here. If it's not here, it should be in the well. It feels like this ice cavern isn't much smaller than the ice cavern that Skydream saw, even though it's smaller. If there's some ice essence here, it would be very useful for the four of us and you. The Ice Empress revealed yet another heavy look in her eyes when she spoke until here. She really wished that she had encountered this ice cavern before she had given up her body. If that were the case, everything would have been different. The Skydream Ice Worm said, all right, Ice. Don't think too much. Honestly speaking, one must be very fortunate to bump into a manifold mysterious ice cavern. I'm not afraid that you'll dislike my words, but both you and the Snow Empress don't have such fortune. You are only here because of Yuhao. If you didn't choose to fuse with Yuhao before, you wouldn't have been able to experience something as good in your entire life. This is why you shouldn't look for problems for yourself. What surprised Wu Yuhao was that the Ice Empress wasn't furious after hearing the Skydream Ice Worm's words. Instead, she nodded and mocked herself, yes. I am indeed finding problems for myself. Let's not talk about this. You must not give up such a rare opportunity. We must tap the resources here effectively. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, Ice Empress, what is this divine ice crystal? What's its use for us? The Ice Empress replied, divine ice crystals might not be as valuable as manifold mysterious ice essence, but they are still extremely valuable. They are the strongest and toughest ice-type metal. They appear as crystals, but they possess the properties of metals. To put it in human words, divine ice crystal is a top-grade rare metal. As for how their special characteristics are used, it will depend on the user. Hui Yuhao was delighted, and said, it seems like Elder Nan Shueishui was right. The divine ice crystals here are very suitable for me. As he spoke, he lifted his right hand. His dark golden terra claws revealed sharp, dark golden blades as he swept it towards the divine ice crystals. Piercing sounds resonated, and 5 streaks of sparks flashed. However, only shallow marks were left on the ice crystals. It was an extremely tough metal. It was pertinent to note that Hui Yuhao would often use his terra claws to sculpt his soul tools when he manufactured them. The sharpness and strength of his terra claws were great, and they were one of his best offensive weapons. However, they weren't enough to damage the ice crystals. This showed how tough they were. Hui Yuhao was confused as he looked at the Ice Empress. The divine ice crystal is so tough. How can we mine it? The Ice Empress smiled and said, there are many items that clash with one another, but there's always something that can overcome another thing. Don't worry, others might find it difficult to find a way, but it won't be difficult for us to leave with these crystals. You can't use your Life Guardian blade. It'll destroy the internal structure of the ice crystals. This divine ice crystal is in itself one of the best ice-type soul conductors and amplifiers. Try pouring your soul power into it. All right. Hui Yuhao agreed to her words and retracted his terra claws. He put his right hand on the ice crystals beside him. He was stunned that this ice crystal didn't feel cold even though the cavern was at such a low temperature. It was as if all its cold was contained within it. He slowly poured in his ultimate ice soul power. After this, his body shook, and he revealed a shocked look on his face. He could clearly sense an affinity when he poured his soul power into the ice crystal. Yes, it was an affinity. It was clearly a metal, but it seemed to have emotions. It felt very close to his soul power. After this, Hui Yuhao felt the ice crystal in his hand softening a little. He tightened his 5 fingers and exerted strength as he pulled, and a huge piece of ice crystal was pulled out just like that. Once this piece of ice was separated from the cavern and landed in his hand, his body immediately emitted a deep blue glow. Light subtly flashed. It was as if the piece of ice crystal had a life of its own. You sense it, don't you? The Ice Empress asked. The reason why it's called the divine ice crystal is because it has evolved into a realm with some life of its own. Animals and plants have their own lives. For minerals and metals, they can exude their own life aura and emotions when they reach a certain quality. It's just that it's much more difficult for them compared to animals and plants. What you are sensing is correct. It's all real. If you want to dig out some ice crystals, there's only one way, your ultimate ice soul power. You, me, and the Snow Empress can do it. Skydream can't do it, and Star Anise is slightly lacking too. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, I'm using your power anyway. Why do I feel that it's no longer hard, but soft, yet resilient? It's as if, after speaking to this point, he paused for a moment and thought of a way to describe it before saying, it's as if it's a huge piece of crystal jelly. It's too magical. The Ice Empress nodded and replied, you must try to communicate with the life aura inside with your ultimate ice soul power. Such a life aura is also called an ice spirit in the extreme north. You can only try to retrieve it for now. It's only when you can fully communicate with it that you can completely own it. Don't think that just because there's a lot of ice crystals here, you can retrieve as many ice spirits as you want. Not many of them can nurture ice spirits. The remaining ice crystals can be dug out, but they don't have ice spirits. This means that there's a lack of spirit inside. You are in luck. This piece of ice crystal contains a life spirit. Seeing the flashing divine ice crystal in his hand, Hui Yuhao's eyes brightened. He was in awe. The miracles of this world indeed have to be continuously explored. Ice Empress, what should we do now? The Ice Empress laughed, isn't it obvious? Whether it's a divine ice crystal that has nurtured an ice spirit or not, it's still very valuable. Quickly, leave with them. The temperature of this place cannot be matched by the temperature of the outside world. I can sense that the icy spring has entered a state of deterioration. In another few hundred to few thousand years, the temperature here wouldn't be sufficient to maintain this manifold mysterious ice cavern. When that happens, everything here will be slowly damaged and destroyed. All right. Hui Yuhao acknowledged her words and started moving. How could he let go of so much good stuff? As his eyes flashed, a layer of gentle, icy jade green light was released from his body. It was his snowy dance of ultimate ice. His snowy dance of ultimate ice contained immense ultimate ice soul power and quickly engulfed the entire cavern. Suddenly, the divine ice crystals in the cavern all lit up, and Hui Yuhao started to extract them. Without ultimate ice soul power, the price to pay for extracting even a small piece of ice crystal would be huge. Even an ultimate Dolor wouldn't be able to operate in such a low temperature. Furthermore, he wouldn't be able to communicate with the ice spirits. However, Hui Yuhao found it much easier to extract these ice crystals. Pieces of divine ice crystals were pulled out of the walls of the cavern. Not only were they preserved, but it also didn't take much effort for him to extract them. Without the need for the Ice Empress to remind him, he would differentiate the ice crystals with ice spirits from those that didn't have ice spirits, and stored them separately in his Starlight Sapphire ring. Divine ice crystals were very special, they contained immense ice-type energy. However, they didn't feel cold on the surface. They only felt slightly colder than ordinary metals to the touch. However, one could guide the ultimate ice origin energy inside them just by pouring in one soul power. Without ultimate ice soul power controlling the origin energy inside, it would instead be unleashed in an explosive manner. The reason why this cavern was so cold was because there would be times when the ice crystals would become unstable internally, causing a leak of their origin energy. This cavern had been filled with divine ice crystals for a long time. The accumulated cold caused this place to turn into a danger zone. As the pieces of ice crystal disappeared into Hui Yuhao's storage-type soul tool, the temperature in the cavern rose noticeably. The surrounding walls also contained layers of crystals. They looked like huge pieces of ice sludge, and were also very sturdy. However, they were far inferior compared to the divine ice crystals. Finally, Hui Yuhao placed the last piece of divine ice crystal into his storage-type soul tool. At this moment, he was suddenly jolted by something, and instantly turned around. He only saw a huge current of water surging towards him. Without the magical power of the ice crystals, the spring water finally surged into the cavern, given that the door wasn't closed either. Hui Yuhao laughed. Both the Sky Dream Ice Worm and Ice Empress fused into his body. He forcefully swam upwards. Outside the well, Nan Shueishui and Nan Qiuqiu were already very anxious from waiting. It had been an hour since Hui Yuhao had descended into the well. However, they hadn't heard anything from the well yet. It had been a long time, and Nan Shueishui doubted that she would be able to hang on for so long if she were the one inside. However, both of them had a similarity: they had absolute confidence in Hui Yuhao's abilities. They had seen Hui Yuhao fusing with Wang Qiu's abilities before, and witnessed the great improvement in his abilities after he formed his sixth soul ring. Although Nan Shueishui wasn't completely confident that Hui Yuhao could deal with the extremely low temperature of the ice cavern, she deeply believed that Hui Yuhao wasn't going to be hurt in any way, given his 7-ringed cultivation. Nan Qiuqiu was slightly worried as she asked, "Mom, why don't you go down and take a look? It's been such a long time, but Yuhao still isn't coming up." Nan Shueishui smiled slightly and said, "Why? Are you anxious? It seems like my precious daughter really has fallen for someone. No matter how hard you work, you'll never be his wife. Why don't you try becoming his concubine?" Nan Qiuqiu was stunned for a moment, then was in disbelief as she stared at Nan Shueishui. After this, she asked, "Mom, you my biological mother. You actually asking me to be someone's concubine?" Nan Shueishui laughed. "It's precisely because I'm your mother that I'm giving you this suggestion. At times, you can't think too highly of yourself. As people always say, it's difficult for guys to chase girls, but it's easy for girls to chase guys. There are many ways for a girl to earn the liking of a guy. I'm not literally asking you to be his concubine. I'm saying that if you really like him, you should try your best to chase him. I support you. If I can have such a son-in-law, I'll laugh even in my sleep." Nan Qiuqiu's face turned red, and she replied, "No way. Who's going to chase him? You don't know that he's such a mule in terms of relationships. Apart from Wang Dong'er, he can't have anyone else in his heart. Didn't you see what happened with Wang Qiu? Qiu was so outstanding, but she could only be his sacrifice. She can't even be with him. This guy is very stubborn once he likes someone. Even a girl who looks like Wang Dong'er can't catch his eye. What about me? I'm not going to do that to myself. Nan Shui sighed and replied, I know it's difficult. Hi, just do as you please. Matters of the heart can't be forced. However, I'm experienced in this matter. If you really like him too much, you must take the initiative. It's only then that you'll have an opportunity. If you choose to give up, you won't stand a chance at all. Nan Chiu was silent. She revealed a pensive look in her eyes. After a brief moment, she nodded silently. At this moment, the sound of splashing water could be heard. Following this, a figure flew out from the well. The intense chill caused Nan Shui and Nan Chiu to stagger backward a few steps. Hui Yuhao slowly revealed himself from the icy fog that covered him. Yuhao, you fine? Nan Chiu asked concernedly. Hui Yuhao shook his head and smiled at the both of them before saying, I am. I'm very fine. This cavern is indeed a treasure ground. Elder Nan, you were right. There's indeed a special rare metal contained inside. Take a look. As he spoke, Hui Yuhao flipped his wrist, and a piece of divine ice crystal that had nurtured an ice spirit appeared in his palm. The color of the divine ice crystal was clearly evident outside. It was icy blue, resembling the color of the sky, whereas the glow that it emanated was deep blue. Under sunlight, even such a small piece of divine ice crystal gave off an ethereal feeling. It was extremely magical. Wow, it's beautiful. Nan Chiu squealed in delight. She wanted to touch it, but she was stopped by Nan Shui. Nan Shui had entered the cavern on her own before. She didn't dare to be impulsive with regards to the stuff inside it. Hui Yuhao smiled and said, Elder Nan, it's fine. This metal is called a divine ice crystal. It indeed contains immense ultimate ice origin energy, but it's very stable. As long as you don't pour your soul power into it, things will be fine. As he spoke, he passed the crystal to Nan Chiu. Nan Chiu received the crystal and looked at it under the sun. Suddenly, the surrounding plot of ground under the crystal was covered by a layer of blurry blue light. Nan Shui smiled as she looked at Hui Yuhao and said, Yuhao, is this ice crystal useful to you? Can it be extracted? Hui Yuhao nodded and answered, I can do it. You need to possess ultimate ice soul power to extract this divine ice crystal. I've already extracted all the crystals from the cavern. This was why I took such a long time. Sorry to have made the both of you wait. Nan Shui smiled, it's good as long as it's useful for you. Quickly, put it away. I hope your abilities will improve much further. As she spoke, she took the crystal from Nan Chiu's hand. After taking a look at it for a moment, she returned it to Hui Yuhao. After receiving the crystal, Hui Yuhao pondered for a moment before saying, Elder, this crystal can only be molded and extracted using ultimate ice soul power. Don't worry, I won't steal what belongs to the Earth Dragon sect. When I turn them into soul tools, I'll give a share of the soul tools I produce with it to the Earth Dragon sect. What do you think? No matter what, this manifold mysterious ice cavern belonged to the Earth Dragon sect. Although Nan Shui mentioned that she was offering it to him, this gift was simply too precious. Nan Shui and seemed to be unbothered. In fact, I wanted to use this place as Chiu's dowry. However, I discovered you were the most suitable person to take control of this place after working with the Tang sect. Since I've decided to give you this place, you can choose what you want to do with it. You don't really have to distinguish between the Earth Dragon and Tang sect either. Don't call me Elder either. You're Chiu's friend. You can call me Auntie. Hui Yuhao could infer the double meaning from Nan Shui's words. However, he could only act stupid, and respectfully replied, Thanks, Auntie. He didn't go into the details of how to allocate these ice crystals. He would definitely compensate the Earth Dragon sect after he turned them into finished products. Action spoke louder than words. Nan Chiu glanced at her mother before looking at him. She jumped excitedly towards Hui Yuhao and laughed, Yuhao, I don't care about others, but I demand to be part of it if you are using such a beautiful treasure to manufacture soul tools. Hui Yuhao smiled as he nodded and said, Definitely. When I return, I'll start researching how to manufacture them. Nan Shui smiled and said, All right, let's go then. Hui Yuhao replied, Auntie, give me a moment. An inquisitive look appeared in Nan Shui's eyes. Hui Yuhao said, Auntie, when I went down to investigate, I discovered that there is a mouth of a spring deep within this well. The water within this spring has a very low temperature, but there seems to be something else hidden inside. I went into the cave to investigate, and now I wish to enter that icy spring to see if there's anything down there. This place can form rare metals that can be considered one of the most precious between heaven and earth, so there must be something that they originate from. A thought occurred to Nan Shui as she said, "There's such a thing? There aren't any records in the Earth Dragon sect's archives about that. The temperature in the icy spring is very low. Will that hurt you?" Hui Yuhao smiled and said, "Don't worry, Auntie. I have ultimate ice soul power. I'll be able to judge if I can't bear it, but there should be no problem protecting myself." Hui Yuhao was protected by the Snow Empress and the Ice Empress, and he was also supported by the Star Anise mysterious ice grass. If he couldn't enter that icy spring, then nobody else in the world could. "All right. Go, then. Chiu Chiu and I will keep watch for you outside." Nan Shui didn't advise him further. Hui Yuhao was a very reliable fellow in her eyes, and he was definitely sure of himself if he said he was. The more she looked at Hui Yuhao, the more she liked him. Those eyes clearly belonged to that of a mother-in-law gazing upon her son-in-law. Even Hui Yuhao couldn't take her gaze any longer. Hui Yuhao bowed at Nan Shui before he leapt into the well and dove deep into the icy spring. The Ice Empress had mentioned that manifold mysterious ice essence had to exist here, whether in small or large amounts. The ice essence wasn't just useful for him, it was also beneficial to different degrees for his 4 spirits, and he couldn't give up on that. Normal soul masters could still use soul tools crafted with divine ice crystals with the help of formation arrays, but only a person with ice-type abilities like Hui Yuhao could use the manifold mysterious ice essence. Furthermore, this was his own discovery, and thus using it wouldn't weigh on his conscience. Quite a bit of spring water had surged into the cave, and the surface level of the spring had dropped a little. Hui Yuhao swiftly dove deeper than he had reached before, and he continued going down while the water pressure around him began to increase, and the temperature swiftly plummeted. The temperature of the spring water closer to the surface rose a little without the ice divine crystals, but the temperature below didn't change at all. Hui Yuhao quickly arrived near the mouth of the spring. Such low temperatures! Hui Yuhao was full of admiration even though he had just arrived. He could clearly feel that his soul power was circulating much more slowly due to the low temperature here. He possessed ultimate ice soul power, and yet his soul power was being affected. It wasn't hard to imagine how normal soul masters would be affected after coming to a place like this. Even titled Doluo could probably only remain here for a few breaths, and even an ultimate Doluo might not have the courage to investigate deep within this icy spring. 2 shadows gradually appeared behind Hui Yuhao's back, the Ice Empress and the Snow Lady. The Ice Empress pulled the Snow Lady along like an elder sister holding her younger sister. They felt the extreme chill around them, and their faces began to show expressions of enjoyment. Bluish-green and dark blue colors glowed at the same time. These 2 lights merged together and turned a deep bluish-green, while this light entered Hui Yuhao's body and formed a layer of protection over his skin. The Star Anise mysterious ice grass came out from his shoulder. A layer of faint blue light emerged, and absorbed the chills that were invading Hui Yuhao's body. Hui Yuhao realized with slight amusement that his soul power wasn't weakening around this icy spring. Instead, with support from his 3 spirits, his soul power was increasing continuously. This situation was similar to when he was in meditation. If he didn't have to hold his breath in this place, he would truly wish to spend more time cultivating here. His cultivation would be more effective. Things that were most suitable for him were always the best. Perhaps the origin energy of heaven and earth here was inferior to the lake of life, but the pure elements of ice were most suitable for his cultivation. Hui Yuhao stopped 1 meter away from the mouth of the icy spring as he thought. Hui Yuhao would never be blindly optimistic or careless even though he was confident. He had gone through far too many lessons and experiences, and no matter what, he wouldn't let himself be placed in harm's way so easily. That was always the best decision. Hui Yuhao gathered spiritual power and transformed it into formless energy as it went through the mouth of the spring. Hui Yuhao's spiritual power was like his eyes, and he would be able to accurately judge the situation as long as he could see inside the mouth of the spring. However, Hui Yuhao was immediately astonished, as his spiritual power felt as if it had entered a sticky swamp. There was great difficulty in pushing it forward, and he would have to expend far too much spiritual power. What? How can elements affect spiritual power? This was the first time Hui Yuhao had encountered something like this. Pull your spiritual power back, Yuhao. Let me go down and take a look. The Ice Empress voice rang out from behind him. Hui Yuhao turned around to look at her and asked, "Why is this happening, Ice Empress?" The Ice Empress answered, "Energies may be different, but they are all of the same kind once they reach a certain standard. Spiritual power is different from elemental energy, but it is still a form of energy. The elements of ice within this icy spring are as extreme as they can get, and your spiritual power will be affected by it by going inside. That is very evident. You might be able to send your spiritual power inside if you use the power of your soul core, but that will expend too much energy. Furthermore, the situation is unclear, so it's better not to take this risk. Let me take a look inside. My origin is inside your body, and a thread of my consciousness will have no problem going inside. All right, thank you for your trouble, Hui Yuhao acknowledged. The Ice Empress transformed into a beam of flowing light and disappeared into the mouth of the spring. Hui Yuhao's 4 spirits were evolving at different rates as he became stronger. Amongst Hui Yuhao's spirits, the Skydream Ice Worm wasn't the most intimately related to him, it was the Ice Empress. The Ice Empress was his martial soul after all. What the Ice Empress meant when she said that her origin was inside his body was that she was Hui Yuhao's martial soul, so damage to a single thread of consciousness wouldn't cause too much trouble. His other 3 spirits all took the true form of spirits. The Skydream Ice Worm and Hui Yuhao were inseparable, and their integration level was comparable to him and the Ice Empress. However, the Skydream Ice Worm's half-spiritual and half-ice abilities were inferior to the Ice Empress in a situation like this. Hui Yuhao waited quietly outside the icy spring. He wasn't hasty, as he had faith in the Ice Empress abilities. Even though only a thread of her consciousness went in, Hui Yuhao still knew far less than the Ice Empress did about the element of ice. It didn't take long before the Ice Empress emerged from the icy spring. She waved at Hui Yuhao excitedly and said, "Everything is fine, come in." All right, Hui Yuhao couldn't hold his breath for much longer. He was starting to feel stifled in his chest, and he passed a message to the Ice Empress with his spiritual power before he activated his soul power and dove in. Hui Yuhao went into the mouth of the icy spring, and he immediately felt an intense wave of cold that invaded his body like millions of steel needles. The temperature of this wave of cold was something that Hui Yuhao had never seen before. From his perspective, this extreme cold exceeded every ice-type energy that he had ever encountered before. He felt as if his entire skeleton were glowing as he was immersed in it. Hui Yuhao had the Ice Jade Emperor Scorpion skeleton and left arm bone to protect those parts. However, the other parts of his body were clearly feeling a little stiff. The Star Anise Mysterious Ice Grass and the Snow Empress displayed their powerful abilities in this moment. They had absorbed a large amount of the elements of ice around them and now formed a protective layer around his body so that he could continue diving downward, as the Ice Empress took point in front. This icy spring was far deeper than Hui Yuhao had judged. He went 30 meters down, and the chills around him became increasingly strong. Hui Yuhao had to continue channeling soul power to resist the cold. He was starting to fall apart because he had been holding his breath for a long time, and this environment put a lot of pressure on him. A suffocating feeling was starting to appear, and that stifling feeling in his chest was starting to make his inner breathing a little unbalanced. Oh no, problems might occur if this continues. Hui Yuhao was beginning to feel a little hesitant. The Ice Empress clearly felt the changes in his body. She waved her hand at him to show that everything was fine as they continued descending into the depths. The Ice Empress was a part of his body. The Ice Empress couldn't live by herself if something happened to him, so Hui Yuhao had absolute faith in the Ice Empress as he gritted his teeth and continued downward. 40 meters, 45 meters, 50 meters. Hui Yuhao almost couldn't bear it anymore at this depth. His body was starting to tremble as the water pressure increased, and with the agony of the intense chill in addition to the harsh suffocating sensations, his body was starting to reach its limits. Hui Yuhao was like Nan Qiuqiu when she was resisting his spiritual pressure before. He was relying only on his willpower to support his body under that enormous pressure. The Ice Empress paused in front of him at this moment before she suddenly accelerated and continued downward. Hui Yuhao paused for a moment. He still had a chance to return if he went back now, but if he went deeper in and if he couldn't extricate himself from this situation, then he would probably be in big trouble. Should I trust the Ice Empress, or should I go up and take a breather before I prepare myself to return? Those 2 thoughts resonated in his mind for but an instant before he made his choice. He gritted his teeth and channeled all his soul power before he pressed his hand backward. 2 waves of soul power surged and propelled his body as he suddenly burst forward and went deeper down. Part 1 end here.